Hi, I'm Michael. I'm one of the owners here at DCanter, a wine boutique in Washington, D.C. I'm a certified specialist in wine and teach wine classes. And right now I'm going to help you learn about some of the things you want to be looking for as you try a glass of wine. Now, I'm sure that many of you have been in the situation where you're at dinner with an unbearable wine snob who pours something in his glass, smells it, and then just lays out a litany of obscure fruit and flavor profiles while you're sitting there thinking, I taste wine. Well, that's pretty much normal. But if you can teach yourself to smell some of those aromas and try some of those different flavor profiles, you will actually get more out of your glass of wine and learn to enjoy it a little bit more. One thing that is difficult about tasting wine is that when we have food in front of ourselves, different fruits, vegetables, meats, we are visually cued to what we're going to taste. If you see a watermelon, you know it's going to taste like watermelon. Now, with wine though, it's a bit more difficult. From a distance, all red wine looks the same. Most white wine looks pretty similar. So you don't necessarily know what you're going to try as soon as you pour it in the glass. But there are a number of visual clues that you can look at. Take white wine, for example. Now, from a distance on screen, it probably just looks like white wine. But something that I can see is that it's got kind of a deep yellow hue, which tells me that it probably has just a little bit of oak aging. Now, the oak imparts some extra flavor compounds, which strengthens the flavor a little bit. Also, it could be a little bit later harvest. There could have been some more residual sugars in there that will make the wine a little bit more powerful when you try it. So, thinking about that, wine can show you a lot before you even try it. Now, the steps for trying wine, most people remember through the 4 S's. You sniff, you swirl it, you smell it again, and then you sip it. So I'm going to take a smell. And as I smell it, I notice that this wine, it's still a little warm. So it's not quite as aromatic as it could be. But I can still get some notes of honey, some floral notes, which are really nice, and just a little bit of ripe kind of apricot fruit. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, how does he smell all that? Now, a lot of wine professionals, they think to themselves and they train themselves to think about different fruits. They know that a white wine could run the gamut from smelling like grapes, of course, to other fruits, be it apricots, be it peaches, kiwi, honeydew. You can even get grassy notes, herbal notes. And what they do is they kind of go through this checklist in their head thinking, do I smell the peaches? Okay, yes. If so, is it white peach? Is it yellow peach? And as they go through that checklist, that mental checklist, they're able to identify different flavors and aromas that they might not otherwise recognize. And that's a kind of a way of making up for those visual cues that you might normally have when a plate of food is put in front of you. So the reason you swirl it around like this is that the wine contains something called phenolic compounds. And those phenolic compounds are what actually gives it the smell and the aroma that makes wine enjoyable to drink. Many people know that a good majority of what you actually taste comes from what you smell. So the more you can help those aromas come to the surface, the easier it's going to be to enjoy that glass of wine. And as I swirled a little bit more, I do get some more fruits, some tropical fruits, maybe some lychee, maybe a little bit of guava. It's really nice and really starts to come alive. And then after you've done that, of course, is the best part. You get to sip. And when you sip it, those scents, those aromas that you've already smelled are going to become a little bit more apparent. You're going to smell it. You're going to taste it much more. At first I smelled a little bit of honey. Now as I sip it, it kind of evolves. It's not just honey, it's more of a honeycomb. And depending upon the type of wine that you're having, you'll be able to experience that more. So think back to the scents that you smelled, the aromas that you experienced, and how does that influence the flavors, and how can you differentiate that even more as you sip the wine. Also, don't forget about the texture of the wine, how it feels in your mouth. If it is very light, if it's very thin, that means it's a light-bodied wine and probably wants to be paired with lighter, simpler food. If it's a little bit bolder, a little bit more viscous, that'll help you pair it with food as well. Maybe something a little bit heavier, a roast chicken perhaps that has a little bit of fat that matches the weight of the wine to the weight of the food. So definitely pay attention to how it feels in your mouth, because that'll help you experience more as you pair it with food. Now, a similar process, in fact, very similar process, takes place with red wine, but the color cues are a bit different. For example, this red wine, it's a Cabernet Sauvignon. It is kind of bright red. In fact, for a big Cabernet Sauvignon, it's a little bit lighter in color than I would expect. And that tells me a few things. It tells me that it's probably from a cooler climate. If it's not as dark, if it's not as rich, it means that the grapes may not have developed as much as they would in warmer climates. It also means that the winemaker may have made the choice to leave the juice in contact with the skins where it gets most of its color for less time, making a lighter bodied wine. As I smell it, I definitely get a lot of sense of kind of dark red cherries, maybe some blackberry in there. And not just blackberry, but as I think about it and I really smell it, it's more of like that blackberry that you get from a blackberry pie. It's very rich and very fruity. So I swirl it again, really releasing a lot of those aromas and phenolic compounds. I get something a little bit more. I get a little bit of herbaceousness. Maybe just a little bit of kind of a leathery note, which is pretty common. The leathery note tells me that it's probably spent some time in oak. And as I sip it, all those flavors, they really come forward again. The blackberry notes that I mentioned before, they really come forward. But now I can taste a bit of acid to it as well, which is nice. It makes your mouth water. And because, it's making my mouth water, I'm getting that sensation of kind of making me want to eat something. Means that it'll probably go really well with a meal that's got a little bit of fat to it. So once again, it's a very simple process of just smelling, kind of thinking in your head about what could possibly be there. Think about different fruits. You don't actually have to have a checklist in your head, but just start thinking of fruits that are red colors. Raspberries, blackberries, cherries, plums, prunes. As you kind of think about what could be in there, you'll start to recognize what is in there. Don't forget to think about how it feels in the mouth and the sensation that it gives you. If it's light, if it's medium, if it's heavy, that'll help you pair with food and make it a much more enjoyable experience overall.